and we'll turn it over to Coach Brown.
Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody had a great weekend watching college football. It's so much fun to see everybody back on the field and playing, and such a credit to everybody who's been involved in making this happen. And these coaches and players across the country have been incredible to play without coaches, to play without some of their players on their teams. Even when some are postponed to get ready to go back the next week. So it's been really pleasing to see. As I sat and watched games this weekend, I think the two things popped up to me. So it seems like there's been more comebacks, so maybe guys aren't in as great a shape as if we had the spring and the summer workouts like normal. So there's a lot of comebacks, so you got to play and you got to finish. And the other thing is kicking game. Special teams have been all over the place. It's been crazy. And I think, again, it's probably because we didn't have as much time to work on some of those issues as you normally would have. For us, this is the longest break that we've taken in Carolina football for 68 years. In 1952, there was a polio outbreak, and we had a 3-week layoff at that time. So, yes, I was 1 year old, but I wasn't available to play at that time. So I'm not going back that far, but Jeremy made me aware of that this morning. We've actually had 2 good weeks of practice, which has been interesting. I didn't know how they would respond last week after not playing Charlotte and then us not being able to secure a game for the weekend. But we had 3 good days of practice last week, so we've had a lot of work on Boston College moving forward. The positives are the young guys that missed spring practice or didn't get as much work this summer have had an extra week to work, or really 2 weeks to work. So hopefully they'll be more ready to play than they would have 2 weeks ago. Also, guys that were injured, as Jeremy mentioned a couple of names before we started, will be healthy for this game, and they probably couldn't have played in an earlier game. I thought this morning about does it still hold true that you improve the most between your first and second game if there's 2 weeks between them, and 3 weeks really between them? And I think probably not. We're starting over. We've got to completely start over. I think the reason you improve so much between game 1 and game 2 is you go right back to work, correct all your mistakes, and you're back into full practice mode. So where I listened to some of our players and I've talked to them, and they said they think it's been really good because we're fresh. We've been able to continue to get in condition and still worked on Boston College, but we still haven't had our second game. So that'll be interesting to see this weekend as we move forward. But I'm not worried about them being excited about playing. They'll be ready to play, and that'll be fun for them as we start going through it. The other thing, it helped us with our secondary loss of Miles Woofuk, the fact that Trey Morrison and Jaquarius Conley had an extra week to work before we played. So that gave us also some more work for them. When we start looking at a couple of other footnotes here before I start on Boston College, we have scheduled Western Carolina for Friday, December the 11th. It'll be Friday night after the Miami game, and there is a clause in there that says that we will play that game unless there is reason to have moved an ACC game. So if there's a postponement of one of our games and we have to move an ACC game to that weekend, then we would not play Western Carolina. But other than that, we are scheduled. The ACC did want us to fill that spot, I think, for TV. So that's something that they wanted us to do. I'm also excited for our players' families that they will have tickets, their normal ticket allotment for our Virginia Tech game in 2 weeks. So that'll be fun to get the families back where they can see their sons play. And that's very, very important to us. And they're talking about 7%, unless that changes between now and Virginia Tech. It sounds like we'd have about 3,500 fans in the stands, which will seem like a whole lot after the Syracuse game. And at Boston College, the way I understand it, no families get tickets, and there will be no fans in the stands at that time. Jeff Hafley is 2-0 at Boston College. He was mentored by Greg Schiano, and Greg's one of the better coaches in the country, but definitely defensive coaches. He did a tremendous job at Ohio State. He actually played for Jay Bateman at Siena. Jay was a 26-year-old head coach, and he and Jeff are very close, and they've been good friends for a long time. And Steve I've met Jeff on Zoom because of our meetings this spring. I haven't met him in person, so I'm looking forward to the challenge this weekend. He has them playing hard. They really got after Duke, and last week didn't play as well against Texas State, but for a new coach with a new staff to have the confidence to hang in there and be 14 down and the team believe in them and come back and win the game, that's probably the worst thing that could have happened to us, because it gives them a lot of confidence coming into this weekend. Steve Adazio had a team of big, strong, tough offensive linemen and running the football, and that was his culture, a defense that played really, really hard. And Jeff's doing the same stuff. 4 of their 5 offensive linemen are back. All 4 of those guys got some awards in the ACC last year. They've got arguably the best tight end in the country in Hunter Long, 16 catches in 2 weeks, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns. So he is an impact player for sure. They've got a big quarterback that transferred in from Notre Dame that was very highly recruited, in Jerkovic. He's 6'5", 230. He's off to a really good start, and he didn't even get there till August. So every week that he plays, he's going to get better and learn more about their offense. So 2 really good backs in Bailey and Levy. Bailey's the 240-pound pounder. And they would like to stay on the field and keep the ball against us because they're a lot bigger than we are up front. And you've got Levy, who's a special teams captain that can play really, really well in space. And then 2 wide receivers, Flowers, who can fly, and Gill, who's a transfer from Ohio State. So, he's very talented as well. So offensively, those guys are good. You start looking at what they do defensively. Jeff was raised on the defensive side of the ball, so they forced 6 turnovers in 2 games. We've only forced 1 in 1 game. So that's a concern for us. They've got 2 really good pass rushers outside with Valdez, 97 and 11. Shylaw, they're both really quick guys inside. Uwanka and Beckett are 2 really good transfers in the defensive line. They're physical. They're not as tall as our offensive linemen, so we're going to have to play with really, really good leverage. Probably their guy that they believe in is Isaiah McDuffie, number 55, the middle linebacker. He's all over the field, and he seems to be their spiritual leader. And then they're coached really, really well in the secondary. So it'll be a fun challenge for us. I'm excited about playing and getting back on the field and just seeing our guys. They've worked so hard. They deserve to play. How will we play? How does anybody know? But it's a national TV game. My friend Joe Tessitore's, he's calling the game along with Greg McElroy. And so it's going to be a great moment for us and Boston College to showcase who we are nationally. Questions?
Okay. Again, use the raise hand function, and please identify yourself and the affiliation you are representing. We will begin today with Andrew Jones. So Andrew, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, what would be a bigger concern? How amped up guys are for an opener, or something like this where you go 3 weeks without playing, you've already gotten a taste of being on the field, and maybe the anxieties might be a little bit more of an issue?
Andrew, I feel like that we are definitely starting the season over. Seems like Syracuse was forever ago. And we played well against Syracuse, except in the second quarter offensively and on special teams. The rest of the game we played well, but we saw things we needed to fix, and we've addressed those things, and now it's time to just do it again. And hopefully we've got 7 straight weeks here, and you've got to anticipate that you play all 7 of those games. And hopefully each week that players will understand more how to handle COVID, and coaches will understand it. And like I said, we're seeing players missing games and guys are going on next man up, and we're seeing coaches miss games and next man up. So also this will be our first time to travel. So we haven't done that. I thought we were one of the fortunate teams to have 2 home games to open the season so we could get comfortable with all the guidelines. And then we lost our second game, but now we've got to get on a plane, and that'll be different. The whole thing will be different. But we have stayed in a hotel. We have some of that routine in place. So I'm just excited to see how we are. I think we've got a chance to be good. This will be a great test for us. Virginia Tech looked really good. So we've got them next weekend. We're about to jump back into it now. We can't, we've been talked about and bragged on enough. It's time for us to prove something.
Sam said last week that he didn't think timing would be an issue because in practice, he gets to actually throw to all the receivers and throw to them a lot. In your experiences, is timing affected by a layoff like this, or is what Sam said 100%? You go in your repetition and should carry into the games.
Yeah, Andrew, I'm going with Sam. We've thrown the ball well in practice. The guys have had great timing. Our secondary is really good, so they've had great battles against each other in practice, and that competition's made us better on both sides of the ball. I think what gets off is special teams. I think that's what we're seeing. You people just can't show the full live picture and keep your team healthy with special teams, and that's what's suffering in ball games so far. You also could see, I'm concerned about ball protection simply because you don't tackle as much full speed. So we haven't done that. You would have gotten that in a game with Charlotte. And you're also concerned some that we didn't strip the ball very well last year, and we didn't strip the ball well against Syracuse. So we need to do a better job of forcing turnovers on defense. So those are things I think that you miss by not playing in live action in a game.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Aaron Beard, you're up.
Hey, Mac, Aaron Beard with the AP. I'm glad you mentioned conditioning because I was going to ask about that today. What kind of, maybe did you do extra emphasis on conditioning as one of the things you had time to do during this gap?
Aaron, we really didn't. We continued to do what we've been doing. I've been so impressed with the 3 phases of our program outside of the coaches, and that's Coach Hess and the way he's handled the COVID workouts from day one when we all went remote, to Luke Ross, who has handled he and the medical staff, Dr. Sioka, have handled all of the guidelines that the kids have to go through. I wasn't sure any of this was going to work, and our eating's working. The food's been good. We social distance at lunch, and then following up with Kelsey, our nutritionist. She's done a tremendous job. So we only had 1 player get cramps in the opening ball game, only 1, and it was hot against Syracuse. And now we've had a couple of weeks to continue to run. And what we do, Aaron, we sprint everywhere we go in practice. So we don't run the old traditional sprints after practice that we all had to run unless we feel like someone has not gotten their running during practice. And your specialists, the receivers, the running backs, the defensive backs, they run the entire practice. So they're always in shape. It's the big guys that you worry about. So we've had a couple of those run extra, but we feel like that by and large that we're in good shape. And it's supposed to be 67 degrees. We check the temperature here and wherever we're playing every day of the game. So we want to know exactly what the temperatures are here so we can prepare our guys for what we're going to see. And it sounds like it's going to be a beautiful Saturday in Boston.
Just to follow up on that, do you look at, I mean, you're talking about you play the way you practice and you run hard and so forth. Is there a difference between practice conditioning and game conditioning? And if there is, can you make that up even though you haven't played this game since September 12th?
Aaron, in my 5 years in TV, the thing I thought I recognized the most that I didn't realize at Texas, you think you do, but I realized a lot of teams don't play hard. and they get beat. And when we say, well, they were flat, that means they weren't ready to play. Well, they had a lot of turnovers. Well, they had a lot of mistakes. That means you're probably not ready to play. Because when you're focused and you're excited about playing, you usually take care of, you do the things you've been taught to do. So what we've tried really, really hard to emphasize more than anything else with our football team is you've got to give us 100% every time you go to a meeting and every time you walk on the field. And we grade loafs. We look at every video, who loafed, who stopped before that whistle blew. Obviously, you can't see the whistle blow on video, so we have a young lady out there that holds up a flag that means the whistle's blown, and they better run until they see that flag go up. And that gets you in condition if you run every play, and then we make them run on and off the field after it's time to switch out. So we feel like that our game speed, we're fulfilling that with the way we practice. And that's something we demand every day.
Thanks, Mac.
Thank you.
Let's go over to CL Brown. CL, go ahead.
Hi, Mac. CL Brown with the Raleigh News and Observer. You've kind of alluded to it before in terms of the NCAA, how they're handling eligibility this year. How does that fold into, like, how do you go about recruiting knowing that some guys that you would have planned, that you planned initially would be gone could actually end up coming back for next season? So I was just curious how this fall, how that plays out for your recruiting.
Yeah, CL, it's very interesting. We're all sitting here looking at roster management now, and what does that mean? Because we've never had COVID before, so that changes a lot of things that you're doing. We've never had the NCAA come out and say this year doesn't count. So all your guys are eligible 4 years after this, but this just doesn't count. So then do your seniors go try to get a job when the job market's tough? Do your seniors go to the NFL if they're not really sure what round they're going to be drafted, but do they roll the dice? Because you have to determine by the second week in January. If you're a graduate, can you get in graduate school if you want to come back? Or do you have to be a grad transfer and go somewhere else? If you're not playing a lot, do you want to transfer? And all those things now are issues that weren't issues before. We've got 120 lockers in our locker room. Next year, we could have up to 97 guys on scholarship. And then what do? We don't have places to put them. So there are a lot of different things that we're having to look at we've never had to look at before. The most concerning thing to me, it won't affect this year's recruiting class. We had a lot of parents say, are you still going to be able to recruit my son even though you have some seniors that may come back? And the answer is yes. You still get your initials this year that you had. The big question will be, and not just your seniors will be gone next year if they come back. The big question will be all of the other guys that did not count this year in their eligibility means that we could have like 52 freshmen on our team next year. And then that really affects the amount of numbers that you may have available for the 2022 class. That's where it's really going to affect recruiting in my standpoint. Billy High and I have talked hours about the effects of recruiting in 2 years. Not this year, but 2 years. Because if everybody stays and the seniors that may not have an easy time finding a job right now, if they're not in the NFL, if they want to stay, then if you go back to 85 in 2 years, that 22 class could be a really small class.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you. But it's a concern that all of us are having to look at.
All right, let's go over to David Hale. David, go ahead.
Hey, Mac, I noticed that your team that you were supposed to play a couple weeks ago, Charlotte, Will Healy, did some interesting sort of team building competitive activities when they couldn't play their game on Saturday. I know Dana Holgerson's talked a little bit about having to get creative a bit to keep guys dialed in during a long stretch. Is there anything different that you've done over these last couple of weeks that you wouldn't normally be doing at this point of the season just to kind of keep guys locked in or build team morale a little bit when you are going, effectively 3 weeks without playing a game?
Yeah, David, one thing we've done is we lift our guys on Friday morning, but then they're off Friday afternoon and all day Saturday, so they can just get away from it and clear their minds and rest their bodies. So we did not want to do anything on Saturday. Some people talked about scrimmaging. I was concerned that if we had a scrimmage on Saturday and they were distracted and disappointed that they didn't play, that we might get somebody hurt because they're just not as into it. What we did is we scrimmaged all of our younger ones on Thursday afternoon, and I know like Coach Longo let Sam call the plays. So it was a lot of fun. I'm not sure I've seen this bunch have this much fun since the bowl game. They were shouting for each other, and it got competitive, and offense and defense were cheering from the sidelines, and they had an absolute blast. So that's probably the most creative thing we've done that was a lot of fun for the players. Because a lot of guys that don't get to play very much and will not play a lot probably in their careers here got to play and had some fun, and the players love that they really enjoy watching guys have fun that work hard on scout teams and young players that haven't had their opportunities yet.
All right, next up is Greg Barnes. Greg, go ahead.
Mack, I wanted to ask you about the Western Carolina game that you mentioned. Did you have a preference whether that game was played, the week of the bye week in November before the Notre Dame game, or did you like the December 11th?
Greg, we ended up because our university moved everything back a week. We have finals the week before the Notre Dame game, so we could not have played that weekend. I mean, we looked at every possible scenario, and it would have been very, very unfair and not smart for us to be taking finals the day of the game and the day before and maybe the day after. So that was something that we initially wanted to do when Rick Steinbacher started looking at the changes in our academic schedule. It was just impossible. And then the ACC did want us to play a +1. We asked, and they said that they would like for us to do that. So we felt like that this was the only other possible way to schedule it. And Western Carolina did work with us. So if we're unfortunate enough to have to postpone a game and move it back, another one, then it would take the place of the Western Carolina game.
There are already a couple of other ACC games scheduled for that second weekend of December. Has the ACC given you any indication that the championship game will be played on December 19th?
They have not. In fact, I'm not even sure that decision has been decided. We've been trying to get to Saturday. So we're wanting to play the ones this Saturday. So I haven't been able to worry about down the road yet. And I was just told a few minutes ago about the Western Carolina game. I mean, that popped up within the last 30 minutes.
Okay. Thanks, Mack.
Thank you.
All right, Ralph Russo, you're up next.
Hey, Mack. I was wondering, what are you doing with players, or what kind of plan do you have for players who have ended up in quarantine to keep them active, or maybe even a kid who tested positive is in isolation but is asymptomatic? So, you have a player who might be inactive per se for 14 days or 10 plus days. Is there anything you can do with those players beyond maybe encouraging them to do a bunch of sit-ups and push-ups to keep them active while they are in either quarantine or isolation?
Ralph, we really can't. We obviously can communicate with them through Zoom, and they get to continue to go to class. But they have to have medical clearance before they can work out with us. And it's a very difficult deal, especially for someone who is asymptomatic, or even more so, someone who's in contact tracing mode, and they're in isolation. So the quarantine is one thing, the isolation is another, but we can't be around them in either case. And we have to take them their food and put it outside the door, and parents can't see them, and it's a very difficult thing. even this weekend, I looked up last night. I think Boston may be an 11-hour car trip if you drive trip. And if we have a player or a coach or a staff member get a positive while we're in Boston, they can't fly. So they've got to get in a car with somebody who's already been positive, and they have to drive them home. So it's there are a lot of different things that we're dealing with right now.
If you don't mind, if I can get a little follow-up there, have your strength and conditioning guys maybe come up with some kind of like in-room program for some of these kids so they can at least say, okay, hey, here's some bands and just do the best you can?
Yes, Ralph, we did that this spring because a lot of our guys didn't have access to a weight room because all their high schools were closed down when they went home, and most of them couldn't afford to go to a workout area, and most of those were closed for a lot of the spring anyway. So that's Brian Hess did an amazing job this spring of having kids just be very creative with their workouts. We had some that filled their backpacks with water bottles and ran and did sit-ups and push-ups, and it was just amazing to see how much these kids wanted to play, and that's why I'm happy we're playing, because they wanted to play and they worked really hard to prepare to play. And even if we don't play well, I think it's healthy for us right now to be playing.
All right, let's go to Chapel Fowler. Chapel, go ahead.
Hey, Mac, Chapel Fowler with the News and Observer. In the recent young guys scrimmages that you mentioned, who are some specific players who have stood out to you in the staff?
I've got a lot on my mind, and that's not one of them. So it would be hard for me to go back in such short term here and stay. Most of them were freshmen or walk-ons, and it was fun to see them. But again, we graded that one on Thursday afternoon, and I've been thinking about Boston College ever since. So that'd be hard for me to come out and see. I do remember John Copenhaver catching 2 passes. So I do remember that. So but I can't go back and individualize those because I'd miss somebody. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you.
All right, Lucas, I believe it's Tomei. Apologize, I don't know your last name. Lucas, go ahead.
Yeah, hey Mac, Lucas Tomei with the Daily Tar Heel. As you mentioned earlier, this is going to be the team's first road trip in this season of uncertainty. I was just wondering what the guys' feelings towards that were and how the team is handling the road trip different than how you guys normally would in a regular season.
Lucas, I probably can't answer that honestly yet because it's so early in the week. And talking to our medical experts, one of the differences will be that they will ask us to wear an N95 mask. So we'll have social distancing on the bus and on the plane, but normally the guys can eat snacks and drink and do things they want to going up and back, and that will not be the case now. So what we will do is try to work out here. Then we'll hop on the plane and get up there in time to go eat dinner at the hotel, and we'll have our meetings there and put them to bed. And it's been so unique. I think we're fortunate to have had an opportunity to stay in a hotel here after the night before the opening game, because a hotel's a hotel and your roommates are different now. You're having to look at what's safe. You're not looking at should Jason and Sam room together because they get to talk game plan and all that. You're totally looking at who's a roommate with a guy right now, who is got a less chance to be sick if he's with this one, and the coaches are sitting far apart on the bus and the plane because we don't want a coach to get sick. So Lucas, you're right in that it's going to be very different, but at least we've had a little taste of it by going to the hotel here and coming back in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last one for Coach Brown, Luke Buxton. Luke, go ahead.
Hey, Coach. Luke Buxton with Inside Carolina. I'm curious, with the announcement that Keenan can have 7% capacity, do you have any indication of who will be allowed or who will have preference? Do the players get to have any vote or say if that will be students or a mixture of fans?
Luke, I only know that I was told that the players can have the normal ticket allotment that they would have had for a normal game. Other than that, it's way beyond me to figure out who goes in. I'm sure Bubba and Kevin and Rick Steinbach are looking at that now. They went from absolutely no fans to 3,500, I think, is our 7%, and that could even change. But Rick and Bubba have worked really, really hard since all this started, understanding they got to plan for a full house. They got to plan for 50%, 25%. So they've looked at a lot of different scenarios and how to keep all of those scenarios safe. So, but they would have to answer that for you. Again, I'm staying in my little lane here and trying to get ready to play Boston College.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
All right, Coach, that's the last one we got for today. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Y'all have a great week. And I would say we'd see you in Boston, but I guess I'll see you on Zoom, or I'll see you Wednesday.